constitutional meetings.
Yes, sir.
The president and vice president will be held accountable to hold these meetings every month. If they're not, they will be suspended for not carrying out their constitutional duties. And we will suspend travel for the week of the council meeting. If you notice lately, everything that we do says, I gotta be here, I gotta be there, I gotta be there. I gotta go to this meeting, to that training, to this, to that. To the point where our constitutional meetings are just bunched up and thrown in the trash can in the corner. And you know what? There are some pretty serious things that came up. We didn't do our, look at our graduation. Look at our employees can't make those loans. Why? Because we sat on the darn thing for 3 months. And yet we're saying we're doing our job. That's a bunch of hogwash. And I may offend people by saying this, but we need to bring that ordinance to enforce it for the remainder of this term. I've been on the council previously twice, and around this time of the year, get into August, on into December, there are never any meetings. Or if they are, they're postponed and pushed on, and then the agenda piles up. So giving everybody a fair warning, we will discuss that in finance at our next meeting, and we will have to take some pretty drastic action in terms of dealing with violations. If we're done with our meeting, good, people can travel wherever they want, but for that, everybody knows constitutionally that's our meeting week. Schedule your meetings else time or whatever, but you know, we...
Yes, bring it on. But you're going to address the short-term loan, the short and the long program.
Yeah, I've got
right
that
now,
right
sir.
here. They're passing it out right now.
Okay.
So I'll move on to that. I would like to ask the secretary to read the resolution. It's an ordinance of the Tribal Council adopting the amended policies and procedures of the early check release program and the short-term and long-term payroll deduction loan programs of the Oglala Sioux tribe. And with that, I'd like to ask the secretary to read the ordinance.
Take a smoke break to read it.
No, we're just going to read the
Preamble.
ordinance.
Just the preamble.
Well, everybody has this ordinance. It's been in finance for what, 3-4 months?
Secretary, to read the ordinance.
Ordinance of the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council adopting amended policies and procedures of the early check release program and the short-term and long-term payroll deduction loan programs of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. Whereas the Oglala Sioux Tribe adopted its constitution and bylaws by referendum vote on December 14, 1935 in accordance with Section 16 of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, 25 U.S.C. subsection 476. And under Article 3 of the Constitution, the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council is the governing body of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. And whereas on October 5th, 2015, by ordinance number 1517, the Oglala Sioux Tribal enacted the amended policies and procedures of the early check release program and the short-term and long-term payroll deduction loan programs of the Oglala Sioux Tribe, hereinafter loan policies. And whereas the Finance Committee of Oglala Sioux Tribe has recommended certain amendments to the loan policies, and whereas the Finance Committee recommends that the loan policies be amended to give first priority for long-term payroll deduction loans to employees of the Oglala Sioux Tribe, and to make such loans available to employees of the organizations and entities chartered by the Oglala Sioux Tribe only upon the availability of funds. And whereas the Finance Committee recommends that the loan policies be amended to allow holders of the long-term payroll deduction loans to rewrite loans to borrow additional funds, even if their existing loans balance is not $500 or less, and if they have not experienced a death in the family or an extreme medical emergency. And whereas the Finance Committee recommends that the loan policies be amended to clarify the principal loan amount available to federal monitors political appointees, emergency officers, and seasonal employees under the long-term payroll deduction loan program. And whereas the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council concurs with the recommendations of the Finance Committee and hereby amends the loan policies in these respects. Now, therefore be ordained that the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council hereby adopts the amended policies and procedures of the Early Check Release Program and the short-term and long-term payroll deduction loan programs of the Oglala Sioux Tribe attached hereto and incorporated herein by reference and certification.
Before I make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask Mr. Gunn to explain the one major change we made in this, which is the amount that you have to be down to before you can make another loan.
Mr. Gunn?
I think under the prior version, there was a requirement that you pay your loan down to a $500 balance before you could borrow up to your maximum for your employment category, and that requirement has been eliminated. So that if you've paid it down, you can borrow up to the maximum for your employment category. And I don't think that there's a requirement that you show emergency, hardship, or need.
That is the one major change in this. Currently, you have to go down to 5 or lower to be able to. The new amendment says that as long as you have some space between your cap and where you're at, you can borrow that amount. So that is one of the changes that is being made.
Thank you.
What was that?
I think our that wasn't the changes that we made. I think we said that even if they owed 1,000, 2,000, but long as it doesn't go over that 5,000 or $3,000 threshold.
That's exactly what I said. Before you were limited by 500, but now you're not. You can do wherever you're at. If you have some room between where you're at and where the cap is, you can borrow that. So that is exactly what I said. So with that,
Yeah, they said the same thing, just in different ways. The loan amount was set forth on page 8. On page 8. So for the long-term loan, there, under the prior version, there wasn't clarity about how much a political appointee could get or a seasonal employee, and now it's spelled out on page 8.
Ms. Carlos?
Was seconding Floyd's motion.
Okay, I'll accept the second. Secretary, call for your vote.
Floyd Brings Plenty,
how?
Don Fire Thunder, Ella Giancarlo,
Yes.
Marilyn Charging Crow, Jackie Sears,
Huh?
Richard Green, Sonia Little Hawk Weston,
Huh?
CJ Clifford, Chancey Wilson,
No.
David Poyer, Patrick Ross,
Yes.
Michael Hermani Horses,
Yes.
Alan Fills a Pipe, Austin Watkins, James Cross, Blaine Little Thunder,
I'll vote yes.
Robin Tapio,
Yeah.
Craig Dillon.
Yes.
Tribal Council got a vote of, I thought we had 16. Pardon me? Also, the impression we had 16. Mr. Parson made 17, didn't he? We got a vote of 10 yes, 2 no, 5 not voting. Motion does carry. There's quite a bit of people not voting.
What does that say about,
Mr. Brinkman?
Mr. Chair, what does that say about our meeting? That means Abe should get those people back in here. And they should be told to stay in here. That's what we're here for, is a meeting. It's time to live up to our household rules we have as a council meeting.
Yes, and we're
People
trying
are
to push the
required
meeting
to
on,
be
Mr.
here.
Brinkman, you got the floor.
That is all I have, Mr. Chairman. I thank you very much.
And thank you for the Finance Committee. 15, OST Health and Human Services Committee. Ms. Weston?
Yeah, I got it right here, but it's just. Yeah, oh, I got it.
We call it smoke breaks, people stay in.
Ms. Weston? Time's wasted.
Hold on, give me,
Women.
give me a copy of, oh, right here, no. I know it's more than that. Is this the one with the? It has the, yeah, it's the one with the, there's like about 3 resolutions on there. This is what I got.
Under Health and Human Services.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah, that's the
fire
one.
protection, fire protection.
Oh, yeah, the 2 amendments,
All
okay.
those ones on Dr. Benton, they went through,
Oh, this one's for tomorrow.
yeah, we didn't have anything, and this one is for
For
behavioral health.
HHS, we did have, we have the one for,
Do we got a man on the HHS committee that can,
we have just one resolution. We had, thank you, Mr. Chairman, but we had just one resolution, and then we had a 2/3 resolution on the behavioral health building. So I'll go with the first resolution. Is a resolution of the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council of the Oglala Sioux Tribe and unincorporated tribe. Resolution of the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council proposing a waiver of the Bureau of Indian Affairs BIA Fire Protection Program to include fire protection for homes and other structures on the Pine Ridge Reservation, and to establish a federally funded tribal fire protection program that includes homes and other structures on the Pine Ridge Reservation. Whereas the Oglala Sioux Tribe is organized under Section 16 of the 1934 Indian Reorganization Act, 25 U.S.C. subsection 476, and is federally recognized Indian tribe and adopted a constitution and bylaws under December 14, 1935. And whereas under Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution, the Tribal Council is a governing body of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. And whereas the Constitution at Article 4, Section 1A authorizes the Tribal Council to negotiate with federal, state, and local governments on behalf of the tribe. And whereas the Constitution and bylaws of the Oglala Sioux Tribe authorize the Tribal Council in Article 4, Section 1M to protect and preserve the property of the tribe. And whereas in 1960, to address low-income housing needs on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, the Tribal Council established the Oglala Sioux Housing Authority. And whereas on February 9, 1998, the Tribal Council enacted Ordinance Number 98-07 that established a charter for the Oglala Sioux Lakota Housing as the successor to the Oglala Sioux Housing Authority and is the tribally designated housing entity for the Oglala Sioux Tribe. And whereas on September 12, 2007, the Tribal Council revised and adopted a new charter for Oglala Sioux Lakota Housing by Ordinance Number 7-43 charter to remedy unsafe and unsanitary housing conditions that are injurious to the public health, safety, and morals, alleviating the acute shortage of decent, safe, and sanitary dwellings for tribal members of low income, and to assist tribal members of all income levels to obtain good and decent housing at a fair and reasonable cost. Now therefore be it resolved that the Oglala Sioux Tribe proposes a waiver of Bureau of Indian Affairs Fire Protection Program to include fire protection for homes and other structures on the Pine Ridge Reservation. And be it further resolved, the Oglala Sioux Tribe calls upon Congress and the administration of the federal government to take whatever legislative and administrative action necessary to both establish and fund a federal firefighting assistance program that will assist tribes like the Oglala Sioux Tribe and that do not have the financial capacity to establish a firefighting program. With that, I so move.
Recognize the motion, second by Ms. Tapia. Secretaries, call for your vote.
Floyd Brings Plenty.
How?
Don Fire Thunder. Yes. Ella Giancarlo.
Yes.
Marilyn Charging Crow. Jackie Sears. Sonia Little Hawk Weston. CJ Clifford. Chancey Wilson.
Yes.
David Poyer. Yes. Patrick Ross.
Yes.
Michael Hermaney Horses.
Yes.
Ellen Filsopipe. Alston Watkins. Blaine Little Thunder. James Cross. Robin Tapio. Craig Dillon.
Yes.
Tribal Council got a vote of 16 yes, 1 not voting. Motion does carry. Thank you very much. Ms. Weston, please.
Thank you, Council. The next resolution was a 2/3 item that we 2/3 on back in March. Resolution of the Tribal Council of the Oglala Sioux Tribe and Unincorporated Tribe. Resolution of the Tribal Council of the Oglala Sioux Tribe opposing the location of the behavioral health facility in Rapid City, South Dakota, and proposing that the facility be built on the Pine Ridge Reservation, a location more convenient for tribal membership. Whereas the Oglala Sioux Tribe adopted its constitution and bylaws by referendum vote on December 10, 1935, in accordance with the Reorganization Act of 1934, 25 U.S.C., subsection 473, and amendments. And whereas under Article 3, Section 1 of the Oglala Sioux Tribe's Constitution, the Oglala Sioux Tribe is the governing body of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. And whereas Article 4, Section 1T of the Oglala Sioux Tribe's Constitution authorizes the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council the power to delegate to subordinate boards or officers any of the enumerated powers in Article 4, Section 1, reserving the right to review any action taken by virtue of such delegated power. And whereas the Health and Human Services Committee is a standing committee of the Oglala Sioux Tribe and has been delegated the power to oversee health and human services matters on behalf of the Oglala Sioux Tribe and its members. And whereas February 14, 2015, the president of the Oglala Sioux Tribe proclaimed a state of emergency on the Pine Ridge Reservation because of the number of youth suicides, attempts at suicide, and referrals for counseling. And whereas in response to the emergency, the Indian Health Service, IHS, purchased a $1.8 million modular unit for the behavioral health facility and will start construction in April 2016 at the Sioux campus in Rapid City, South Dakota. And whereas U.S. Senator John Thune and U.S. Representative Kristi Noem have opposed the location for the facility in a November 2015 letter addressed to Health Secretary Sylvia Burwell. And whereas the IHS did not consult with tribes in planning and placement of the facility, and the location creates a hardship for tribal members from the Pine Ridge Reservation who do not have vehicles to travel over 100 miles for services. Now therefore be it resolved that the Tribal Council of the Oglala Sioux Tribe opposes the location of the behavioral health facility in Rapid City, South Dakota, and proposing that the facility be built on the Pine Ridge Reservation, a location more convenient for tribal membership. And with that, I so move.
Recognize your motion on the resolution read, seconded by Mr. Clifford and Ms. Tapia. Secretaries can call for your vote.
Floyd Brings Plenty.
How?
Don Fire Thunder.
Yes.
Ella Giancarlo.
Yes.
Marilyn Charging Crow. Jackie Sears. Richard. Sonia Little Hawk Weston. CJ Clifford. Chancey Wilson. David Poyer.
Yes.
Patrick Ross.
Yes.
Michael Hermani Horses.
Yes.
Alan Pipe. Austin Watkins. Blaine Little Thunder. James Cross.
Yes.
Robin Tapio. Craig Dillon.
Yes.
Tribal Council got a vote of 16 yes, 1 not voting. Motion does carry. Thank you very much, Ms. Weston.
That's all we have under HHS committee. Thank you, council.
I'd like to thank the AG. And going to the OST Land Committee, Mr. Poyer.
Mr. Chairman, I request that the Secretary read the one on, to the National Park Service on the buffalo.
If I could add before we read the resolution that I did go to Washington, I forgot when, years past, on this specific subject here, when the North Unit of the Badlands National Park was giving the buffalo to the Intertribal Bison Council. And I put this up to John Jarvis, and he's still the director of the National Park Service, saying that I interpreted that cooperative agreement to say that the Oglala Sioux tribe was to receive all the surplus buffalo off the North Unit. After a couple of weeks, they came back and said, yes, my interpretation is right. And so we started getting them again. Now, just the last couple of years, the North Unit's been giving them to the Intertribal Bison Co-op again because we got different superintendents out there. Now, I understand that last year it was over 400 head. And this, in my opinion, breaks that cooperative agreement we had. I had another question to them that we had the first right of first refusal on that concessions of the Badlands National Park, and they agreed with me there too, that we had the right of first refusal on that. But they keep breaking that cooperative agreement, and they, even though they agree sometimes with what we're doing right now on the surplus buffalo, we need to get this resolution passed, and to John Jarvis, the head of the National Park Service. Thank you.
Resolution of Oglala Sioux Tribal Council requesting that the United States Department of the Interior National Park Service provide any and all excess buffalo from the Badlands National Park to the Oglala Sioux Tribe. Whereas the Oglala Sioux Tribe adopted its constitution and bylaws by referendum vote on December 14, 1935 in accordance with Section 16 of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934, 25 U.S.C. subsections 476, and under Article 3 of the Constitution, the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council is the governing body of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. And whereas on and or about January 2nd, 1976, Oglala Sioux Tribe and the United States Department of Interior National Park Service entered into a memorandum of agreement to facilitate the establishment, development, administration, and public use of certain lands of the Oglala Sioux Tribe for Badlands National Park. And whereas as a part of the memorandum of agreement, the U.S. Department of Interior National Park Service agreed to give any surplus animals, including buffalo from the Badlands National Park, to the Oglala Sioux Tribe for restocking purposes outside the boundaries of the Badlands National Park. And whereas the Oglala Sioux Tribe has established the Oglala Sioux Parks and Recreation Authority for purpose of managing, protecting, regulating, and enhancing the wildlife and recreational resources on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And whereas, among other things, the Oglala Sioux Parks and Recreation Authority is responsible for managing and maintaining the buffalo herd of Oglala Sioux Tribe. And whereas the buffalo herd is an important resource of the Oglala Sioux Tribe, the buffalo are a sacred part of our Oglala Lakota heritage. Management of the tribe's buffalo herd provides essential jobs to tribal members through the Oglala Sioux Tribe's Park and Recreation Authority. Income generated from the sale of buffalo helps fund many programs of the Oglala Sioux Tribe, Oglala Sioux Parks and Recreation Authority, and meat from the buffalo provides meals for the elderly and funerals. And whereas in order to properly manage and sustain the tribe's buffalo herd, the Oglala Sioux Tribe and the Oglala Sioux Tribe's Park and Recreation Authority rely upon the agreement by the U.S. Department of Interior National Park Service to give the tribe any surplus buffalo from the Badlands National Park. Now, therefore be it resolved that the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council hereby requests that the United States Department of Interior National Park Service honor its agreement with the Oglala Sioux Tribe and give to the tribe any and all excess buffalo from the Badlands National Park for managed by the Oglala Sioux Tribe Parks and Recreation Authority certification.
With that, I so move.
Thank you. Accept your motion. Second by Mr. Clifford. Secretary can call for your vote.
Floyd Brings Plenty,
How?
John Fire Thunder, Ella John Carlo,
Yes.
Marilyn Charging Crow, Jackie Sears,
Huh?
Sonia Lil Hog Weston, CJ Clifford,
How?
Chancey Wilson,
How?
David Poyer,
Yes.
Patrick Ross,
How?
Michael Hermany Horses,
Yes.
Alan Philzappipe, Austin Watkins,
How?
Blaine Little Thunder,
Oh.
James Cross,
Yes.
Robin Tapio, Craig Dillett.
Yes.
Member Council got a vote of 15 yes, 2 not voting. Motion does carry. Thank you very much. Mr. Puya, if I may, Tribal Council. Before, BIA contacted me, they got some meat that they want to give to the tribe. I told them, give it to the elderly males. Just today about noon, some young lady comes from the bureau and says that elderly males could not accept them. She says state elderly males can't accept any kinds of outside beef or anything like that. So I said, the elderly meals is not run by the state here. We do have it, I think, in Martin and possibly Wombley, but
Not one big.
Kyle. But I said, elderly meals can accept it. Gee whiz. And so she didn't have the correct name on the elderly meals director. So I put the sissy in charge to tell her to get in touch with that elderly meals director and get that excess meat that the BIA has on over to the elderly meals. Just for your information. Now continue, Mr. Puya.
Thanks, Council. The next resolution, I would like to have the Secretary read it. Resolution, the Oglala Sioux Tribe directing the Bureau of Indian Affairs to quarantine all cattle belonging to Curtis Temple and that a certified veterinarian provide written documentation that these cattle are disease-free and that the cattle shall remain in quarantine until Mr. Curtis Temple comes into compliance with the pertinent laws and regulations.
You have a copy of that resolution? The Secretary says she doesn't have it.
I know, I have to get mine from somebody else too. Some got it, some didn't.
Resolution of the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council directing the Bureau of Indian Affairs to quarantine all cattle belonging to Curtis Temple and that a certified veterinarian provide written documentation that is cattle are disease-free and that the cattle shall remain in quarantine until Mr. Curtis Temple comes into compliance with all pertinent laws and regulations. The Oglala Sioux Tribe organized in accordance with Section 16 of the Indian Reorganization Act of 1934 did in December 1935 adopt a federally approved constitution and bylaws by referendum vote. And whereas under Article 3, Section 6 of the Oglala Sioux Tribe's Constitution, the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council is designated as the governing body of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. And whereas Oglala Sioux Tribal Council is mandated to protect the health and welfare of members of the Oglala Sioux Tribe. Whereas Oglala Sioux Tribe's Land and Natural Resource Committee is a standing committee of the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council who did meet with the quorum present on the 21st day of March 2016 at the council chambers in Pine Ridge, South Dakota. And whereas the OST Land and Natural Resource Committee has been made aware of the disease that has infected Mr. Curtis Temple's cattle, and whereas several tribal members
who are also cattle ranchers, were in attendance at the OST Land and Resource Committee meeting, and they expressed concerns about the disease infecting Mr. Curtis Temple's cattle and the fear that it will spread to other cattle on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation if the cattle are not properly medically treated. And whereas Mr. Temple's cattle are currently being held in livestock pens in Nebraska and in South Dakota, and whereas the OST Land and Natural Resource Committee does recommend that the Bureau of Indian Affairs notify the livestock pens in Nebraska and South Dakota that the cattle of Mr. Curtis Temple be quarantined and that a veterinarian provide written documentation that the cattle are disease-free. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Oglala Sioux Tribal Council does hereby direct the Bureau of Indian Affairs to notify the livestock pens in Nebraska and South Dakota that all the cattle they are holding, which belong to Mr. Curtis Temples, be quarantined and that a veterinarian provide written documentation that the cattle are disease-free. Be it further resolved that the Bureau of Indian Affairs shall quarantine Mr. Curtis Temple's cattle until he comes into compliance with all pertinent laws and regulations.
With that, I so move, Mr. Chair.
Recognize your motion. Ms. Sears, please.
Yes. I'd like to give the floor to Holly Wilson.
Yes, Holly?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Council. Before I get started, I just wanted to say thank you from the Wilson family, the Tyan family, and the Lamont family for everything the tribe's doing. Also, the young man that was missing from Kyle. You know what, it seems like we work on crises. When we do have a crisis, that's one good thing. The tribe kicks in, and so we really appreciate that. I am here today on behalf of a very dear friend, Curtis Temple, who's a tribal member. Mr. Puyer does know that we've been coming to the land committee meetings. The last meeting, there wasn't legal counsel there. We provided documentation that Mr. Temple's herd shouldn't be quarantined. Yes, there was an issue with one bull. The BIA slaughtered that bull, and they sold that bull. They packaged up the meat, and they had an auction right behind us. And it was sold, so some tribal member bought it. This was the bull that was infected with trick. Now, the cattle was held up after it was impounded in Gordon Livestock for several months. Nobody knows and nobody can say, no veterinarian, there's not a scientist out there that could say the trick wasn't picked up there. It was one bull. Mr. Temple did have a court case in federal court, and Mr. Bilecki will explain that if you have any questions. But, you know, all in all, this man has complied. I'd like to ask if you would kindly review a memorandum of understanding with the South Dakota State veterinarian. And this was signed by Curtis, the veterinarian, and his attorney. And there's this, and then also we have test results of over 100 head that was tested and came back negative. I can't understand that the tribe would want to issue a quarantine like this. This is our tribal member. He's doing what he can to get this. Can we get this passed out? Because this is proof the land committee didn't have. There's enough copies for everybody. This is like issuing a bill of attainder on a tribal member. And I would like to say, you know, that you guys know operators. Chancey, you're an operator out there. You have family that run cattle. Ello, you do too. Davey, you do. So you folks know better than me. I think CJ does. But you know better than me what goes into operations. You take care of your operation like you would a job 24/7. You don't never give up. The land committee took this action. I'm surprised that the tribal attorneys weren't up and up on the federal court case. The cows were all sold. The cows that were held in Nebraska were all sold by the BIA. The BIA didn't have a court order. They used their 25 CFR. and they instituted a sale, but there was only one that had trick. And if you know as an operator, it works itself out. You might have a dry cow, but you know, everything's done then. Several surrounding tribal members on that list, there was 2 that I counted, because I done my research. 2 gentlemen came in. But what I was concerned about was they never allowed Curtis to come in and answer to the committee. This is drastic action. This is nonetheless other than a bill of attainder on a tribal member, and we can't do that. We shouldn't do that. And so if you look at the memorandum of understanding that's before you, and this is dated November 4th, 2015. So he actually started taking care of the issue a long time ago. And the assistant South Dakota assistant state veterinarian, they discussed a plan on how to bring back the animals and reintroduce them back on 169 and 501. But as the case went further, they ended up quarantining the cattle in Nebraska, Tony Johnson's place. But nonetheless, they had a protocol that the state veterinarian put out that Curtis signed and said, I will follow it. So he did. If you look at the next page of testing, that was completed March 31st of this year. So it started in 15 and it come into March. So I'm thinking that the resolution is fruitless. Why would we want to do that? We could just carry on, and he's going to follow the state vet's recommendation. It seems like Mr. Temple has been before this council time and time again. But I think it's time for our leadership to understand that we can't single out just one, and we need to make laws to help people that are large operators like him. Isn't that the goal? You start off small, you go, get as big as you can. But our grazing ordinance doesn't allow that because you're limited with 300 head on an allocation. So what we need to do as legislators is address that grazing ordinance, and I know that council is looking at making amendments to that and possibly putting some language in there that would be helpful for an operator that is larger than what the grazing ordinance allows on allocation. But, you know, I just want to say that he's a good person. I know, you know, I heard a lot of good comments today about ranchers, about farmers, and I would just like to remind you that that was good. That was really good stuff that we heard today. And you're in the leadership role. You are who we look to. And I honestly respect that. But there comes a time when you almost feel like you're defeated at the get-go because you can't get it across to certain people. It almost seems like certain people are politically influencing others, and you know, it just gives you a bad taste. But for now, I've provided the proof that he has got protocol and that he's following it. All the rest of the cattle was sold in Nebraska. We don't know who bought the cattle. We have to go through and wait for the U.S. attorney to give that information to his attorney. So we don't even know where the proceeds went. So I'm just asking tribal council to think about this issue and pull that resolution back. He's already following the law. Thank you. There's Bill Bilecki. Just wanted to say 2 words. Please.
Mr. President, Honorable Council, and there's not too much I can add to what Holly had already said, that other than the fact that Mr. Temple has been complying with the requests of the South Dakota State Veterinarian. Again, the Nebraska herd is no longer an issue. They're gone. We have no control. The BIA's had control since August 19 of 2015. Mr. Temple has not had control since that time. And we have reports from the Nebraska State Veterinarian that the BIA did bring him unlawfully into the state of Nebraska. We're addressing those issues in court. We're before the IBIA. We're also before the Federal District Court in Rapid City. And these issues are being addressed judicially. Again, we ask that this council does not take action. It would be a political action, and essentially would be blackballing Mr. Temple. It would be a form of legislative punishment, bill of attainder, which would violate the tribal constitution. I don't know if everyone understands what a bill of attainder actually is and what it is. A bill of attainder was a legislative act that singled out one or more persons and imposed punishment on them without benefit of trial. Such actions are regarded as odious by the framers of the Constitution because it was the traditional rule of a court judging an individual case to impose punishment. That was written by William Rehnquist of the United States Supreme Court. And the harm here would be that it would be blackballing Curtis Temple unnecessarily. He is complying with all the state regulations. As the evidence shows, we have he's just had a recent sale a few weeks ago. The state approved the sale. Every bull is being tested, every cow is being tested, pregnancy tested, and there's no reason for this whatsoever for this action to be taken. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I got a motion, no second. Mr. Carlo, please.
I have a question. Mr. Bilecki could answer it.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you prove that those bulls that were tested are from that specific herd up in the red shirt area?
I cannot today, but I can, yes, ma'am. If I may point out, as Ms. Wilson had stated, that from the herd that was actually taken, impounded, and unlawfully taken to Nebraska, it was taken on August 19. The discovery of Trek wasn't until September 18. This herd was commingled. Additionally, this herd was also commingled with the Buffington herd before impound. The question is, where did the trick come from? Where did it originate? No one knows. But this is singling out Curtis. It's not singling out the Buffingtons or anybody else's.
I think, Mr. Bilecki, that you came here to prove a point today, and you came to prove to us that Curtis, it isn't Curtis's bulls with the trichomonas. So I think if you had that information, you should have brought it today. You know, that should have been part of your presentation to show us. You know, there's been comments made, calls made to individuals, threats made to individuals. There's been threats made in the land committee. And there's a lot of land committee people in here that heard it, along with other people sitting there. You know, so I'm gonna tell you, I'm sick and tired of this issue. Everybody's tired of it.
Well, the issue is not going to go away until we're able to adjudicate it in court, ma'am. And I can assure you that Mr. Temple is equally tired of the issue, as well as the same as everyone else. And
I'll second Dave's motion.
Chairman, I can recognize you a second. Mr. Wilson, you had a question? No. Mr. Sears?
Yeah, this is probably for Davey. Was Mr. Temple afforded to come in and be addressed on these situations?
On this issue, in working with the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Mr. Temple was given letters, and so was stock guards surrounding, bordering these units or these cattle. They all tested for the the disease. The report that the land committee had got from the Bureau of Indian Affairs and the state veterinarian is that Mr. Temple did not test. We know where these cattle were tested. These cattle were tested off reservation. They were not tested the ones on reservation. The gentleman over there, sitting in a corner, these cattle were tested at his residence. That's what we were told. And that's off reservation. So I guess none of the cattle that we're talking about here have been tested on reservation. And that's what we're after, because there's been tribal members and non-members that have found positive in their herds. They have disposed of them cattle. What we're trying to do is have a clean reservation, regardless of whose cattle it is. But if he refuses to test, how do we prove that? Because he has a number of range units bordering other tribal members' cattle, and we're trying to clean this up. It's nothing, but everybody has been notified. There's been a few missed, and land operations, what they've told us, the Bureau has told us that even people that border off reservation, where these cattle, they was not notified, but they were, I guess, eventually they went and tested their cattle too to make sure that they were clean. How it is, what I'm trying to say is, we're trying to make sure that we have, this can spread and infect a lot of cattle on this reservation.
I still have the floor. Also, I wanted to, Davey, you just said that you heard that cattle were tested over there, and I was just hearing the other council rep, saying we need documentation presented. We're listening to hearsay too. So I think that, we just need to table this and address this situation with all the council, because I don't think Curtis is being heard either. He deserves due process in this before being taken out and disciplined like this. I think that we need to hear from him.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Davey, Ella John, Floyd, CJ, Craig, Blaine, we get the phone calls from neighboring ranchers. Bulls getting into their pastures. They're small operators. They can't afford to have this trick problem. One of the comments made to a district member of mine was he had a broken leg a year ago and he called to tell him there was bulls out in his pasture. And Mr. Temple told him, he said, well, you're a cowboy, aren't you? And he said, well, yeah, but I got a broken leg. He said, well, your wife's a cowboy, ain't she? He said, well, I don't know, I guess. And he said, well, tell her to rope him and cut him for me. That ain't their job, to take care of Mr. Temple's cattle for him. To be a good neighbor, help fix fences. To be a good neighbor, clean up your herds and take care of them cattle. Letting cattle run around till they're 3-4 years old as bulls ain't taking care of your livestock. Everybody is treated fairly. The neighbors all had to test. Mr. Temple has asked us to test all of his bulls as well.
Mr. Crawford.
From the very start of this, let's go back to whenever he come in for leases. I think the problem stems farther back than just this trichomonas coming up on one bull. But I understand this to be all bulls tested, not cows. That's this document here. All bulls tested, not cows. So as far as looking at this, and this is nothing but cows tested, this is bulls tested for the trichomonas. But I don't think from the very start, and I spoke my mind before, is that Mr. Temple wasn't never given a fair shake from the get-go. And not only that, and that the more that time goes on and people bring up certain things to me, they can show you most recently on a bid that went out on land, where certain people were selected separate now. And I asked these people to bring forward the documents, so they will be bringing forward the documents. And that stems from our department, our land department. Now, looking at all reality, and like they said, penalizing one person. If Mr. Temple put out that many 100 head of bulls to be tested, then it shows effort on his part that he's complying with the rules. And I think that by penalizing one cowboy, and that be the case, then you better start looking and straighten up some of these laws and resolutions and ordinances that apply to us here in cowboy country, because not all of them are fairly executed from my experience in watching these things that they know, because there's many conflicts that come about. And whether the due process is followed all the way through, or was that person even given a proper due process? Was he even invited ever to our land meetings? Personally invited to come talk to us? You know? The other people was invited. You bring your other friends, and Mr. Temple, I sat in that meeting. Nope. I come out of the meeting, his people said, how come they didn't invite Kurt to that meeting? You know, you talk about communications. I'm about communications. Let's talk about it, but let's apply these laws fair and equal also. Thank you.
Mr. Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we're kind of on a touchy subject, but here, the deal is this all came about because the individual refused to move his cattle off a range unit he no longer had lease to. And so that's where all of this started. Now, it took 3 years for the VIA to do anything to move those cows out of that range unit, and that's how they ended up in Nebraska. And so that's how they ended up getting tested, because one cow got tested, or one bull got tested and it came positive. So we talk about all of this, about it being a good relative, about being a tribal member, but it comes back to integrity. You know, he no longer had the lease for this land where those cattle were, and he refused to move them. And the other person that came in and got the lease never got to use the unit. So that's where this started from. You know, it's not about we just went out there and did this to Mr. Temple. It's been a process that's been going on for a long time. And so when we talk about fairness and equality, it should have come back to the leaser to have the integrity to understand that he no longer had the lease and should have moved his cattle off the range unit.
He's the landowner in the units, Austin. He's
Relarn.
from your district.
Regardless, though,
He's from your district.
regardless, it's about the proper leasing of the land. And so it all goes back to that and integrity. And so, and when he no longer had the integrity to move his own cattle out, then he, you know, left it upon the BIA to follow their actions, which were 3 years later. So we haven't leased the land for that long. And so the tribe is the one being affected, you know, and the many other producers out there, I guess, that are around these. But so you go back, and so to say that he willfully agreed to getting these tested, well, it wasn't in his control because it was ordered by the Nebraska veterinarian because of the cattle that came up that way. And so to say that he's under an MOA to get all the rest tested is probably not really a true statement. So to just step back from myself, and so what we're here for is to protect the interests of the tribe. We're not here to protect the interests of one individual, and I've said that many times since we've been here. And it all comes back to me for integrity. And so he should have had the integrity to remove his cows at that point, and we wouldn't be here today, but we are. So that's just background information that maybe everybody else out there needs to hear, besides just a few people that are playing one side or the other. And so I think that's where we should stay with the issue and then move forward, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Carlo?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I just wanted to answer a question that CJ threw out there. You know, you asked, has Mr. Temple been invited to those meetings? Maybe if you would come to land committee and be there on time instead of showing up an hour before we're done or a half hour before we're done, you would know what was going on. We've never said he couldn't come to a meeting.
You never invited him.
Well, we don't invite anybody else either.
Never
It's an
invited him.
open meeting, CJ. And I will stand up for all the other producers on this reservation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Go back to the agenda.
I got a motion second on the floor. Ms. Sears? Mr. Malecki, 2 minutes.
If I may respond to the issue with respect to the trespass and the leases, those issues are still pending before the IBIA and also before the tribal courts. We just had a hearing the other.
We have a motion and a second to approve it. Ms. Sears made a motion to table, but no second. So we're running the
Can we still have?
No.
I'm gonna run the motion. I'm running the tabling motion first.
Floyd Brings
Take
Plenty,
precedence. Seconded by Mr. Clifford.
Don Fire Thunder, Ella Giancarlo,
No.
Marilyn Charging Crow,
Yeah.
Jackie Sears,
Huh.
Sonia Lohawk Weston,
Yeah.
CJ Clifford,
How?
Chancey Wilson,
No.
David Poyer,
No.
Patrick Ross,
No.
Michael Hermany Horses,
No.
Alan Philsopipe,
Yeah.
Austin Watkins,
No.
Blaine Little Thunder,
Yeah.
Robin Tapio,
Yeah.
Craig Dillon.
No.
Tribal Council, Mr. Cross was excused, so we got a quorum of 16. I got 15 people voting, 2, 6, 8, 9. Okay, we got 3 yes, 13 no's, tabling motion did fail. I got a motion on the table to approve the resolution read for the second. Mr. Puya. We got quorum 60. Secretary can call for your motion on the motion to approve.
Floyd Brings Plenty,
How's that?
Take a break for a minute.
I'm gonna run the motion. I got a motion on the floor. We can take a break after that.
Floyd Brings Plenty,
How?
Don Fire Thunder, Ella Giancarlo,
Yes.
Marilyn Charging Crow, Jackie Sears,
Here.
Sonia Lohawk Weston,
Huh.
CJ Clifford,
Yeah.
Chancey Wilson,
Yes.
David Poyer,
Yes.
Patrick Ross,
Yes.
Michael Hermany Horses,
Yes.
Alan Philsopipe, Austin Watkins,
Yes.
Blaine Little Thunder,
Oh.
Robin Tapio,
Huh.
Craig Dillon.
Yes.
Tribal Council got a vote of 14 yes, 2 no's. Motion does carry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council. That's all the night committee has.
That's all for Land Committee. Thank you, Land Committee. We gonna take a break? Take a 5-minute break. Thank you.
Council, there's something that on the agenda, don't bring it. Don't bring it to the floor. Robert was a voter.